weeks into the impeachment trial of Vice President Sara Duterte, and I would like to know who's watching. It is conventional wisdom to say that the impeachment trial of President Joseph Estrada 25 years ago and the impeachment trial of Chief Justice Renato Corona in 2012 were national civics lessons. Will we be able to say the same of the Sara saga? Hi, I'm John Nery, and you are in the Public Square. Jay Bautista is widely known in the media industry for his work in audience measurement and analytics. He used to be with Nielsen, then Kantar Media. Kantar Media has since rebranded globally as 55 Blue, and he serves as managing director. Jay, thank you for joining us again in the Public Square.
My pleasure, John.
Jay, I'd like to talk first about the Corona impeachment because I know that you have data on that. And then from there, move on to the ongoing Duterte impeachment. So the Corona impeachment ran from January 16 to May 29, 2012. How did public interest in it, as measured by TV ratings and all that, evolve over time?
Yeah, so historically, when we were tracking the Corona impeachment coverage back in 2012, we saw that there was a very high interest among the public. And since at that time, social media and the internet was not yet as prevalent as today, we saw that a lot of Filipinos were tuning in. In fact, the tracking that we did in 2012 showed that as the trial progressed, the increase in viewership was very notable up until the decision day around May, where we recorded the peak of viewing across the country, not just in Mega Manila, but in places like Visayas and Mindanao.
Okay. Let's talk first about the parameters of your survey or scanning for the Corona impeachment. Which of the channels did you, or the platforms, did you focus on?
Okay, so on a normal scale, we track all channels that are available on any regular TV set across the country. So we measure this through a device we call a people meter.
Okay.
So it's an electronic device almost the size of a Wi-Fi modem.
Okay.
So that's attached to the TV set, and it automatically collects all the information that's viewed on a TV set from the time it's turned on until the time it's turned off.
And then is this based on a random sample?
Yes, so we have a random sample of households across the country, both urban and rural Philippines. The current panel is around 2,000 homes that projects to about 20 million households in the country who have TV sets. So that allows us to collect data 24/7, and the machine is so sensitive, it collects minute by minute viewing among households. So back in the day of the Corona impeachment, every channel that regularly broadcast live the impeachment trial were collected in the study. Among them were DZMM, Teleradio, ABS-CBN was also prominent, and Solar News were among the channels who regularly devoted time to broadcast.
Wait, you mentioned DZMM, so a radio station, but
yeah, the Teleradio version.
The TV version.
So that was also captured in our study.
Okay. I'm looking at data that you shared with me. So on verdict day, May 29, that was the peak, as you said. No, can you give us an idea, maybe some of the numbers involved here?
So during the decision day, viewers actually spent about 60 minutes tuning in, and mind you, that was an afternoon. So people either stayed at home, did not go to work, or deliberately changed their schedule to watch the trial.
But the that last day of the trial itself was about 4 or 5 hours long.
Yes, correct. So,
right? So they spent an hour of their
on
time.
average.
Okay.
So if you track the viewing from the time it started to the end, you would notice that the viewing kept going up and up until the verdict was provided. And I think we clocked in about more than 10% of the population tuned in at that time.
10% of the population with TV sets.
At about 10% of about 90 million Filipinos. So that's about almost 10 million were glued just on that session. And on the average, let's say a normal TV program during the day, let's say Itbulaga or Showtime, would probably generate about 2 million viewers.
Okay.
So getting 10 million in an afternoon viewing is really significant.
What is this 65 million reach? Total reach? Yeah, what is it?
So we also count the people who tuned in from day one until the last day of the trial. So that's a cumulative measure of people who watch in and out uniquely for the trial day. So at the end of the trial, about 65 million Filipinos watch at least one episode.
How does it compare to like soap opera?
So that's quite comparable. A soap opera of Coco Martin or Ding Dong Dantes today, given the whole duration of their life per season, would probably reach about 80 to 85%. So this one is not a telenovela, not a show, a noontime show, but it significantly reached a lot of Filipinos.
What was the demographic like? Who were watching?
Okay, good question. During that time, it was a cross-section. Again, Facebook was still, 5 years old at that time. Smartphones were not yet as prevalent. So television was really at the center of information and news access. So the audience cut across millennials, Gen X, boomers, also across income class, from the upper income groups to the lower income groups, and across geography from Manila, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao.
Okay. Was it predominantly female or male?
Predominantly male in terms of the gender profile of the viewers.
The concept of appointment TV, no? Maybe at the time that was more of a thing, right? So did people watch it at that particular when it was airing, or were they watching replays?
Okay, good point. So at that time, yes, everything was watched live. So people were tuning in as the trial was progressing live.
What are some of your main takeaways, related to the Corona impeachment as a media event?
It actually changed the landscape at that time, where, in fact, as the verdict day approached, a lot of the commercial TV networks shifted their programming. So that was unheard of at that time, because that meant that you would be foregoing certain advertising revenues in favor of a national event that they felt at that time was important enough to change schedules and devote airtime without even earning advertising.
One of your one of your key takeaways was that viewers watch selectively, tuning in for high drama and high information moments. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so the typical Filipino viewer is sensitive to content and pacing. That's what we see when they watch noontime shows or telenovelas. If a particular segment in a commercial TV program drags or becomes a bit boring, they tune out and switch to other channels. So the same was true for the trial. When there were segments where a Miriam defensor would take the podium and lash out at prosecution or witnesses, we saw an increase in viewing. But when it became too technical, a discussion among the prosecution or the defense, we saw attention waning and people shifting to other programs.
I wonder how that works in real life. No, I mean, you're not watching it, it's happening, but then how do you get word that Miriam is on? I wonder how that works.
Well, probably there's one member of the family tuning, and they'll probably call the other. Oh, it's becoming exciting, etc. Or they've heard it from the grapevine from previous coverage that Miriam's parts or other senator judges' parts during the trial proceedings were important enough. So they tend to be able to discern, if a part of the session was worth tuning into or best to change channels.
If I read your data correctly, the engagement, the audience rather, for the Corona impeachment trial was not only Manila-centric.
Yes.
You said strong, especially in Mindanao and South Luzon.
Correct. Yeah, in fact, there were certain episodes, I think the verdict day where Mindanao and Visayas viewers over-index against Manila, meaning there were more viewers tuning in. Despite the size of the audience in Manila, their time spent in Visayas and Mindanao was higher. That told us that the interest was encompassing all segments of the population.
Would you be able to compare the Corona impeachment trial as a media event to the Estrada trial of 25 years ago? Or there are no data points to...
Unfortunately, there were no data points yet at that time. Or we don't have access. It's
Sure. But anecdotally...
it was even bigger because Estrada was the president. He was a very popular president at that time. And it was the first time that anyone was impeached.
That's right.
Historically. And it caused a lot of social events as well afterwards, like the EDSA DOS, etc. So I think if we compared the three current impeachments that we're having, the Estrada, the Corona, and the current one, that one would have been, if we had data right now, I would assume it would have been like a Coco Martin or a Ding Dong Dantes telenovela in terms of popularity.
Who was the big winner in... sorry to use that term, in media.
Okay, so during the Corona impeachment, I think ABS-CBN decided initially at the start to devote time. So they invested more time, and that sort of swayed a lot of the viewers to them, even if afterwards the other networks also started airing the...
Was it on their main channel?
Yes, so it was both on the teleradyo and then also on the main channel.
And then on ANC, I guess.
Correct, yeah. So it was really a gamble commercially on their part, but I guess in terms of image at the end of the day, it was a plus for them.
Let's move to the third impeachment trial, the current one. So today is, day 6 just ended. You have some preliminary data, right? Can you talk about the parameters first? Okay. Which channels or platforms did you focus on?
So 12 years after, we're in 2026, the landscape has changed. So right now, I think a lot of the commercial stations have a different priority because most of them are struggling in terms of advertising revenues as the digital change has happened. So there's not much coverage that we see, except for a few channels like GTV, which is run by GMA, ANC, and then some of the government channels are also devoting time. So it's not as big in terms of free-to-air coverage as was in 2013 and also 2012, and also, of course, during the Estrada impeachment. So it's a more limited attention being given right now.
Okay, so given those parameters, how many people were watching in the first 2 weeks?
So the most viewers we tracked was on day 1, July 6. We generated about almost more than 1 million viewers, which is a far cry from the 10 million viewers back in 2012. So the biggest...
but that was verdict day.
Yes, that was verdict day. So this one started well. I think 1 million for an afternoon coverage is not bad, but it started to wane after a few days. So right now we're averaging about 800,000 viewers per episode if you look at the first 5 trial days that was broadcast on TV.
Do you have an idea already of the demographic?
Yes. So
who's watching? So
that's a good question, John. So it's unlike before in 2012, which was a mass-based audience. Now it's very different. So if you look at GTV, which is a UHF channel by GMA, the viewers are more millennial and Gen X. If you look at DZMM, which is covering it more extensively also, still as teleradyo, their viewers are more boomers.
Okay.
and upper class. The GTV is more lower income, mass based. The coverage of DZMM and ANC are more upper class viewers, but more mature in terms of audience profile. There are more females watching GTV, male-female ratio, but when it comes to DZMM, it's skewed towards more male viewers. So it's a different audience. What's good about that is it means that we're capturing more segments, but at a lesser degree, so to speak.
Oh, interesting that in both the Corona impeachment trial and in the Duterte impeachment trial, you are covering or you're monitoring DZMM.
Yes.
So might be an interesting area of study later on. No? One of your findings so far in the first 5 days, no, you were able to cover up to day 5, is that Teleradio delivered deeper commitment. What does that mean?
Yeah, when we say commitment, that means the amount of time spent tuning into to the coverage. No? So as I mentioned before, in the Corona impeachment, the average viewing was about 60 minutes, regardless of the length. For DZMM alone, they're averaging 100 minutes per viewer.
All right.
So that means other viewers are actually spending more than 100 minutes. So that means they're really glued. But again, time will tell if depending on how the process is or the trial progresses, if that commitment will continue in the next few trial days.
In terms of the evolution over time, the Corona impeachment, it seems to me, but I don't have the data. No, it seems to me that the graph is, straight going up, right? So I don't know if, in fact, after day 1 of the Corona impeachment trial, the ratings dipped and then it went up. But here you're saying that there was a slight dip after day 1, from like 1 million to about now averaging about 800,000. Tama ba yun?
Yes, that's correct. So in the Corona impeachment, we saw a sort of a hockey stick trend. So that meant that each trial date actually increased in viewing and peaked during the verdict day. So there was no downtime in terms of viewing during that time. Here it's different. Day 1 was high, we had 1 million viewers. Day 2 and 3 went down, and then I think July 13 went up again in terms of viewing. So I think because of the influence of other media platforms like streaming, etc., social media, it's impacting on whether people were tuned in on television or not.
Of course, from our own personal experience, we know that today the media landscape is, the key word is fragmented, right? And of course, you also pointed that out, that the audience for the first 5 days of the Duterte impeachment trial was fragmented. Can you talk more about that?
Correct, yeah. So unlike the Corona impeachment cover, which was homogeneous in nature in terms of viewing, here we're seeing that depending on the channel that's covering the trial, there's a specific type of audience that they're catching. So there's no duplication happening right now. And that tells us how fragmented the viewing is. For example, if you look at each channel, GTV versus DZMM, on a regional basis, we'll see that most of the viewers of DZMM and ANC are concentrated in Manila, Luzon. But if you look at GTV or IBC or PTV4, you'll notice a bigger segment of viewers from Visayas and Mindanao watching. So probably a factor is the reach or the broadcast footprint, but also probably the profile of the viewers, telling us that there are more nuances now in terms of watching TV, in terms of being heterogeneous rather than homogeneous.
Is there anything striking about the audience from Mindanao, considering that the Vice President is from Mindanao?
Yeah, so we're seeing if there's available broadcasts like GTV, which is nationwide, we're seeing a significant viewing from Visayas and Mindanao coming into the picture. So there's interest definitely from that geographic segment.
So it seems to me that so we're dealing with very specific measurements, no? But for a smaller part of the media landscape. Let's talk about some of the other parts. I don't know if you've also monitored them or are in a position to monitor them, but I noticed, for instance, that so just before our interview, I looked at the YouTube channel of the Senate. The Senate of the Philippines broadcasts the impeachment trial also, and in the first week, I think they had something like 300,000, a little under 300,000 views for day one. This week, I think they're averaging closer to 500, maybe a little over 500,000 views. First of all, how do we understand views in YouTube and Facebook context? And where do we place this, these platforms in the media landscape?
Okay, so to the first point, before we go into the digital space, we're also noticing that there are fewer Gen Zs and Gen Alphas watching on television, the traditional one. Okay. So that's another thing that we saw, which meant they were getting their information on the trial from other sources, which is digital. So on digital, we indirectly also monitor streaming platforms. And hopefully we'll have a service in the near future where we can, similar to TV ratings, regularly report viewing. But one of the nuances we need to understand is that views are not equivalent to people. Okay. So that's one thing we try to tell our clients. Views are actually generated from devices that are tuned into a particular, if it's a YouTube channel, so YouTube will count how many devices are watching or connected at a particular time. So if a channel reports 500,000 views, that does not tell us if there are duplications. So for example, if I tune in at 1 p.m. and then I tune out and then I tune in again on the YouTube channel at a later time, I'll be counted again. So there might be some duplication happening there, and we're not able to really also pinpoint the profile of those watching. So it's not an apples to apples comparison in terms of our audience measurement for regular television.
But that would be the future, right? I mean, more people taking their news from streaming and so on. What are some of your preliminary maybe assumptions about what's happening on YouTube, Facebook, and maybe there are other social media apps that are all doing well as far as the trial is concerned?
So aside from the actual coverage of the trial online, what we're also seeing is a lot of the corollary content providers, so bloggers, the publishing companies online, etc., because they are able to synthesize, provide summaries, provide breaking news updates, tend to also capture attention among the viewers. No? What's the other difference? The attention time is shorter online versus traditional platforms like television. So that's and a lot unlike TV, which is appointment based, a lot of people are doing playback or post viewing and just waiting for highlights. So that's a major difference in the viewing habit. So they're now more prone to misinformation, disinformation, because if you only look at snippets and don't really follow the whole trial process, then that might open a certain problems for the audience.
When I was, I was a fan of the Game of Thrones series, and when I was watching them, I would immediately after finishing an episode read up on recaps. No, so that was a new thing, maybe about 10 years ago, and also, now there are recaps and reels, right? How do we make sense of them? Do you put them together like a cumulative reach or something? Like some people watch the trial on TV, some people just watch, and in fact some people have told me that they look out for the Rappler recaps. No, I mean that's all the time they have for that day, so they only watch the recap version, and some people see just clips or reels on it. And so these three, for instance, just these three things, do you put them together in terms of reach? How do you measure?
So right now they're analyzed separately because there are different nuances too. So there's the live broadcast. There's the recap, as you mentioned, and then there's the rebroadcast, or the sort of the viral parts, which are reels or stories. So each one is treated differently as a measure of evaluating the performance. Because at the end of the day, they can't be aggregated, because that would be providing certain might lead you to wrong implications or conclusions. But it's valued as a total in terms of the broader footprint of a content.
Earlier today, the impeachment trial, day 6, just featured oral arguments, right? So I wonder, so the measurement is still ongoing. I wonder if people would be more interested in that, because it's there's a for and against, and then they're arguing against each other. Would they watch that more than, for instance, the very tedious authentication of a video that everyone else has seen, and so on?
Yeah. So I've looked at some of the previous episodes and looked at it, as you mentioned, minute by minute.
Okay.
So we have the shape of the program analysis.
All right, okay.
So we know which parts are popular, which ones people tune out in. And you're correct in your observation. If it becomes too technical, too legalistic, we see viewing dip.
Okay.
But if it becomes more interactive and more human in terms of the discussion, we see the viewing pick up a bit. So it's people are sensitive to the way the proceedings are being run.
So I actually have this sense that maybe it's not so bad if a senator stands up and asks a question that has already been asked and answered. So parang iisipin natin, repetitive, ano? But the fact that this personality stands up, you might get more people tuning in. Oh, tumayo na naman si parang ganon. Kahit na natanong na yung tanong na yun, nasagot na. Tama ba yun? Would it be appropriate to read?
In fact, it has parallels to commercial TV programs. We're very personality based as an audience.
Okay.
So if our idol, if someone we know is on air or is speaking for that matter, then that captures the attention of the viewer. So to your point, I think there's a debate whether people like Robin standing or not in terms of asking questions.
But people watch.
People watch. People pay attention. So if we want to keep that interest going, that type of dynamics is important.
Did you have a chance, to go back to the Corona impeachment trial, and because we have more definite numbers, did you have a chance to see the influence of the trial on other media or in other media content?
Yes.
Like people were talking about this and
Yeah. Well, not really about talking about it, but we see the content crossing other platforms. So we saw back in 2012 that the AM listening increased. So the commentaries about the trial and probably some of the coverage helped bring in audience as well. We saw newspaper readership increase as well back in 2012. So as far as the media landscape was concerned, that topic was very much important to the general audience, that led them to actually follow it across platforms.
So I don't know whether you call it a multiplier effect or just a simple amplification, but again, it's early days, no? But would you expect to see that a similar kind of amplification is taking place? Maybe not necessarily in the same platforms like newspapers and radio, although when I went to work this morning, I was listening to DZWB and, they were talking about this, right? Would you expect to see the same kind of amplification, but not necessarily in the same media platforms, maybe in other newer platforms?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think our experience nowadays, if you look at your social media news feed, or at least your feed, you'll see more people talking about it, more people sharing
Yes,
content.
yes,
So I think that's one form of amplification. If you look at all of the vloggers and online content providers, you would see that most of them are mentioning the impeachment in one form or another. So I guess that's another form of amplification, because they're seeing that on their own online metrics that attention is there, that viewing is increasing, or views are amplified. So the more that they generate related content. So yes, definitely, I think podcasts as well are increasing in terms of focusing on impeachment as a topic. So while it's early days, we see that there's some form of virality, but again, depends on how it's handled moving forward.
The reason I ask these questions is with the Corona impeachment and with the Estrada impeachment, it was very clear to me as a political journalist that people were learning things about how democracy works, how the Senate as impeachment court functions, and so on. So it was a national civics lesson, no? And I'm wondering, is it too early to tell whether the same thing will happen? No? People will come away from this not only saying, nakakainis talaga to si senator like this, or maganda yung sinabi ni senator ganito, but saying, may natutunan ako na parang yung difference between the so-called crime of grave threats versus the impeachable offense of betrayal of public trust.
Yeah, well, I would hope so, personally. But I guess, it's too early to tell at this point. The important thing is people are paying attention. I think that's a win for now, and then let's see if that translates to learnings and personal reflection, introspection, and other positive outcomes in the future. But the important thing is, people are tuning in, because if it was a case that TV, there was no viewing and then it was not being talked about on social media, then that might be a bigger problem.
That's right. That's right. I mean, if it happens in a vacuum,
correct. Yeah.
Nothing will happen outside. What should we watch out for? The Corona impeachment ran for about 4 to 5 months, right? And maybe that helped explain the evolution. It's short enough. But this Duterte impeachment trial, if we continue the pace, no, and Senator Win Gatchalian computed it yesterday, if we continue at the same pace, we'll end up with a 17-month-long trial. Actually, the prosecutors and the defense, they're looking at like a 7 or 8 months trial, but still twice as long as the Corona impeachment. Would the length of this trial have an effect, do you think, on viewing habits?
Historically, well, it's all about the content, basically. So if the content remains engaging enough to the audience, if the content remains educational enough to the audience, then regardless of how long it lasts, we will see the audience there, because we've seen programs on TV, run for 7 years, 10 years, and the audience remained. But that's a commercial entertainment program. But this one is, a different thing. So I guess they need to look back at the Corona impeachment, because as far as we are concerned right now, that was a very good pace and length of time, because as we saw the viewing, it actually progressed pretty positively. But if it's a 17-month thing, I'm not sure. Offhand, it's going to be a challenge to keep the audience engaged.
You said that you looked at the data even on a minute-to-minute basis. I wonder if you can identify certain personalities like a senator, or maybe from day 5, Private Prosecutor Lorna Kapunan, and what kind of impact it had on the audience. I mean, so for instance, Chis Escudero as presiding officer, he's received some praise for his efficient and relatively fair way of handling things. that speed, that fairness, is that reflected in the ratings? Do people, are you able to identify that?
Yeah, actually, offhand, because we have a transcript of the program, we can
and then you run
actually
it by- okay.
we can run it minute by and actually identify when the viewing pick who was actually speaking, what was the topic. So that type of analysis is actually available and doable. Yeah.
But would you be able to
Offhand,
answer it? No.
offhand, I don't. But I can probably get back to you on that.
Okay, please do. Maybe just one last question. What should we watch out for, in the next, maybe the next month? So the impeachment trial will continue from Monday to Wednesday, 2 p.m. Until the week before the SONA. SONA is on July 27. And after that, from July 28, it will run from Tuesday to Thursday. At 3 p.m. Oh, by the way, do you think the schedule change will have an impact? Moving it to the middle of the week and then bringing it down to 3 p.m. Will that have an impact on viewership?
The last 2 days might probably have Fridays most probably because people tend to.
No. So it will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Thursday. Okay. Most likely not. The key day that's usually volatile is Friday.
I see. Okay. And then bringing it down to 3 p.m.
3 p.m. But if it overlaps with the news at 6 p.m., people will tune out.
Oh.
So that's so.
So have you seen that? So we've had a couple of extra lengthy sessions.
So,
you've seen that?
Yeah. So as soon as the day part goes into 6 p.m., people will go to their the usual habits, which is watching news or other programs. So they will definitely tune out.
I see. So this will be a challenge.
Correct. And then if it reaches 8 p.m., that's when Coco Martin and Ding Dong Dantes will be online.
You know what? I think we should have Coco Martin and Ding Dong Dantes in the Senate impeachment court.
You'll have higher ratings.
Ask the questions. That was really illuminating, Jay. Thank you very much. Jay Bautista, Managing Director of 55 Blue. Thank you very much. It is, of course, still early days. At least 86 trial days remain in the calendar. But I hope that more and more of the public will tune in. The impeachment trial of VP Sara Duterte is not only a legal process, but a political act too. And politics involves all of us. Download the Rappler Communities app and join the impeachment trial chat room. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Rappler Plus. Thank you. This is John Nery. See you in the public sphere.